So if you've ever played the strategy game Civilization, you've probably heard the legend. You spend hours, even days, carefully building your empire, only to see it all wiped out by a nuclear missile. And who launched it? Mahatma Gandhi. Let's get into the absolutely bizarre story of how the world's greatest pacifist became gaming's most infamous warmonger.
It's a great question, right? For decades, this has been one of the most famous bugs in video game history, a perfect, almost poetic glitch. But you know, the real story is actually way more fascinating than the legend we all thought we knew.
All right, so first, let's talk about the myth. The story that circulated for years is just a masterpiece of logic. It suggests that Gandhi's sudden aggression wasn't a choice, oh no, but a flawless, completely understandable programming bug. And what makes this whole story so believable is just how simple the math seems to be. See, in the game, every leader had an aggression score. Gandhi, of course, had the lowest score possible, a 1. But later in the game, if you adopt a democracy-style government, you get a -2 penalty to your aggression. So simple math, right? 1 minus 2 equals 255? Wait, what? How does that even work?
Yeah, that number, 255, that is the key to this entire myth. It's not just some random big number. It's the absolute maximum value for a very specific kind of computer variable. An aggression score that was supposed to top out around 10 suddenly just skyrockets to 255, instantly flipping this peaceful leader into an absolute tyrant.
So the technical reason this all sounded so plausible comes down to something called an unsigned 8-bit integer. It's basically just a way computers store numbers. An 8-bit variable can hold 256 different values, but if it's unsigned, that means it can't handle negative numbers. Its range is strictly from 0 all the way up to 255. Okay, so this really gets to the heart of it. A signed integer, that could handle Gandhi's math just fine. 1 minus 2 is -1, no problem. But an unsigned integer, it just hits a wall. It literally cannot go below 0. So what on earth does a computer do when you tell it to calculate a number it physically can't represent? Well, it does this thing called an underflow. And the best way to think about this is what we call the odometer effect. Imagine an old car's odometer. If you tried to roll it backward from 0, it wouldn't go to -1, right? It would flip all the way around to 999999. The computer does the exact same thing. Trying to go to -1 on this unsigned scale makes it wrap all the way around to the highest possible value, 255. It's a perfect, elegant, beautiful glitch.
I mean, it's a fantastic story. It's logical. It's even a great way to explain how integer underflow works. There's just one tiny little problem with it. The story is completely 100% false.
Yeah, you heard that right. This whole thing was basically built on, well, nothing. In his 2020 memoir, the creator of the entire series, Sid Meier himself, finally put this whole rumor to bed. He confirmed it's a fascinating story, but it's just not true. It was a fan-made invention that just sounded so good that everybody, myself included, took it as fact.
So let's break down exactly why this myth just doesn't hold up. First off, the game's actual code used signed integers, so it could have easily handled a -1. No problem there. Second, the AI's logic was way more complex than that. It had all sorts of checks and balances. And third, and this is the real kicker, this whole story about an integer overflow, it didn't even show up until years after the game came out on a fan wiki.
Okay, so if the bug wasn't real, then why does everyone remember Gandhi being so nuke happy? What was really going on in the game that created this totally universal experience for players? Well, the real answer is actually a lot cooler, and it has to do with how the game's strategy naturally played out. See, Gandhi's AI was programmed to be peaceful, and it really focused on science. That meant he almost never got into those expensive, messy wars in the early game. This let him quietly build up this huge, untouched economy and tech base. And the result? He was almost always the first leader to research the Manhattan Project and get his hands on nuclear weapons. And there you have it, that's the simple truth. Once any leader in Civilization gets nukes, the game's AI is programmed to use them either as a threat or as a weapon if they feel cornered. So we all saw Gandhi as aggressive simply because he was usually the first, and sometimes the only, one at the table with the ultimate weapon. But, and this is my favorite part of the whole story, this is where things get really wild. The developers over at Firaxis Games, they heard this urban legend about the integer overflow, and they absolutely loved it. They thought the story of a pacifist accidentally turning into a warmonger because of a bug was just so funny and so iconic that they decided, you know what,
Let's make it official. The myth became an intentional feature. It was this brilliant inside joke for the entire community.
And just look at how far they ran with this joke. In Civilization 5, they added a hidden stat called nuke willingness on a scale of 1 to 10. You've got famously warlike leaders like Genghis Khan at a 7, Napoleon's a 6, and Gandhi? They cranked him all the way up to a 12. He was literally, by design, off the charts eager to push the button.
So what's the big takeaway from the whole legend of nuclear Gandhi? I mean, yeah, it's a great little lesson in computer science, for sure. But it's an even better lesson in human psychology and just the raw power of a really good story.
See, in the end, the story of the bug was just better. It was more dramatic, more ironic than the simple reality of game strategy. That glitch never actually existed in the original game's code, but the story we all told about it was so powerful that it literally forced its way into becoming code in the sequels. And that really makes you wonder, right? What's more powerful, the actual code or the story we tell ourselves about?